Thank you, Robert. Speaking of trivia, here's one. Which Canadian political party has racked up government deficits at, let me just check to make sure I have my numbers right, 6 times the rate of the Liberal Party? This is the dirty little secret about conservative governments in this country. They are bad at the economy. They're bad budget planners. They are bad fiscal managers. They don't have an economic thought in their heads. They have this sort of ideologically driven libertarian fervor, and out comes all this lip service to the private sector and the business sector. But when you stand back and look at the numbers, conservative governments have been bad almost without exception for the Canadian economy. We have about a $500 billion before the last 2 years of spending. By the spring of 2008, the national debt, or the federal debt in this country, was about $490 million. Virtually all of it accumulated since 1964, when the Pearsonian era began and that Liberal government came in. Of that $490 million, 335, have I been saying million? 335 billion of that $490 billion debt accumulated during conservative governments, even though they were only in for 13 of those 45 years. That's how the average annual increase in the federal debt when conservative governments have been in power has been $26 billion. That's their average. The Liberals are at like 3. It's a myth that you elect conservative governments in order to knock the federal economy or the federal budget into shape. It's a myth that conservative governments are good for the Canadian economy. And I think, depending of course on the vagaries of the issue of the week and so on, and the timing of the election, that this next election should be and will be fought on what the Conservatives are doing to this economy. And I'm not an ideologue on the question of government deficits. There is a time for borrowing, there is a time for investing in the future. But what are they spending this money on? This year's budget's going to be a record. This year's deficit, I think it's heading for, I want to say 40-some billion dollars. I mean, they're breaking all the old records that Mulroney set. For what? Stealth jet bombers that are designed for first strike theaters of war? What on earth is Canada doing spending $16 billion on stealth jet fighters? Mega prisons? I mean, what kind of legacy are we leaving to our children and their children by borrowing money to buy jet bombers and build mega prisons? So I thought I would lead with these comments on the economic issue. And this is not going to be a stump speech. The issues, we have the luxury this time of not having to have our whole platform on the night of the nomination meeting. But I think in the weeks ahead, as we do zero in on the shape of the Green Party platform for this next election and where the emphasis should be placed, I think now is the time for Greens to be emphasizing that the key to economic renewal is environmental renewal. The key to social justice is environmental renewal. This is what Greens, when they're at their best, have always understood in a way that Liberals and Conservatives and Social Democrats have never really grasped, is that it's not about greening the old political traditions. It's about establishing a new political tradition which brings together the threads of economic efficiency and the power of the private sector and all of the logistical and financing expertise it can bring to bear with the role of government and the public investor, with the social justice agenda, which has always been at the heart of the Canadian political psyche in my mind. That all comes together in green politics in a new formulation which simply isn't there. We've seen how quickly the Liberal Party abandoned environmentalism. Stephen Dion his chair was still warm when they were taking that stuff out of their priority list. The Conservatives don't even have a thing to say about it. And I don't know, the NDP are wandering around in the wilderness as far as I can tell. But we know that when push comes to shove, environment and all of these old political traditions will be seen as a separate set of issues on the side that gets dealt with as, quote, the environmental agenda. And green politics, and especially under the leadership of Elizabeth May, and I have to tell you, we have one of the great political leaders in the world right now in Elizabeth May. People, I know she evokes a lot of emotion, all great leaders do, but matter of fact, I made my decision to be here tonight watching her give that speech in Toronto this summer, and I'm thinking, wow, I'd almost forgotten what leadership looks like. That's what leadership looks like. It looks like Elizabeth May, and it looks like the Green Party of Canada, and we have to move now. We are on the cusp. The breakthroughs are starting to happen. We've seen the election of Greens in the House of Commons in the UK. We've seen the election of Greens in the lower house in Australia, I believe for the first time. The breakthroughs, even in first-past-the-post systems, are starting to happen. Here in Northumberland, we are poised for a breakthrough. We won't elect a Green in this next election, let's not kid ourselves. But we went from, I think, under 5% to over 8% in the last election. This is the election where we will break through 10%. That must be our objective. This is the election where the Green Party of Northumberland and Quinte West needs to marshal its resources, marshal its people, and there are 500 of us on our contact list who have either been donors or volunteers or in some way found their way on to the database we keep of supporters, active supporters in this region. And there were 5,000 people that voted for us in the last election. When Stephen Dion was sitting there and strategic voting was a big deal. So we ought to be able to get 6,000 or 7,000 votes in this next election, which will be more than enough to take us past that 10% threshold. That's the threshold where our campaign budget comes back to us in the form of a full refund from the government, so it strengthens our party. It means that we don't end up the day after the election with an empty bank account. It gets replenished. That's the level where anybody who is inclined to try and dismiss the Green Party as an also-ran or as a not in the running type of party simply can no longer be credible trying to do that. So we need to set for ourselves the goal of busting through that 10% threshold of the popular vote here in Northumberland Quinte West in this coming election. And that's what I'm looking to see happen. I think that I'm hoping in some ways that the election, I'm torn on the timing. In some ways I'm hoping the election will not be this fall, because I think we have a bit of rebuilding and strengthening to do in the local Green Party before we will be as ready as we need to be for this next election. On the other hand, the issues are so urgent, and the mess that the Conservatives are making with the economy is so severe that the sooner the election comes, the better, so that we can get back to the ballot box and send the message to Ottawa that we just can't go on like this, squandering our precious human resources, financial resources, and even our natural resources in a way that's undermining the long-term sustainability of Canada. And I'll have more to say about that as the campaign develops and as our local activity in the riding develops. But what I wanted to sort of end with here tonight, I think, is a plea to all of you to put that 10% number, that, let's say, that 7,000 vote figure in your head is what we're going to try and achieve in this next election, and see if we can't get enough of our friends and friends of our friends to come out and help with the work and the fundraising and the energy that it will take to achieve that. I think that momentum will build. There ought to be a breakthrough environment for the Green Party in this election. As I said, the conditions are much more favorable, basically, than they were last time. And it's just a question now, with the help of some of the great appointments that have been made by Elizabeth in Ottawa, which have increased both the strategic organizational capability of the party with people, and you'll hear Johan speak in a moment, and you'll see how lucky we are to have all of that, not only his personal skill, but the historical experience he brings from his work with the global Greens and in building up the Belgian Green Party over time. We've got all of that coming in to help us here in Canada now. along with Elizabeth's leadership and the strategic and communications insights of Ralph Van Merge and the rest of the team in Ottawa. So it seems to me that this really is the time now when we can make that breakthrough with the Green Party in Canada. I think we will elect MPs, and I think we will achieve a higher result in Northumberland than we ever have had before. I think the possibility for running third in this riding is quite achievable, especially given the disarray of the NDP. So I think that I'm up for it. Like I say, I'm hoping to get a little bit more time to get ready, but it's already better than last time where the election was called and we didn't have a candidate. And we met here in a state of something bordering on panic, trying to jump into an election campaign that had already started without the Green Party having a candidate. So that's what I'm here tonight for. My energies have been renewed. My commitment is renewed. I'm looking forward to representing the Green Party in Northumberland, Quinte West in the weeks and months ahead as we approach the election. And I'm hoping that you'll join me and that others who are not here tonight but who I know are with us will also join us in the weeks ahead in the work that it takes to build up the organization and the commitment that you need to have on the day that the writs are dropped. So I think that needs to be our short-term goal over the next couple of months, is building election readiness. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.